Hey everybody. Oh, hold on. Oops. One moment. There we go. Hey everybody, what's going on? How y'all doing? It is Tuesday. Let me know if everything works over there. I've been kind of struggling with my OBS. If I am delayed or if there's lag or anything like that, please let me know. Welcome everybody. It's Tuesday. It is time for the adventure prep stream. Yes, that's right. We've been gone for so long, so desperately long. We haven't had a chance to do this, but now I'm back. I've been taking so many trips the past couple of weeks. Lag free. Oh, David. Beautiful. Welcome. Thanks, David. Thanks for coming. I love to hear lag free, my two favorite words in the English language. I've been taking so many trips, y'all. I went to Denver a couple of weeks ago, and then last weekend I went back to Minnesota to see my family. And I gotta tell you, as lovely as it was to have a vacation and to see my family most recently, I am sick of taking trips. I am sick of airports. I am sick of wearing my mask all the time. That doesn't mean I won't do it. I'm just sick of wearing it. They're very uncomfortable. But I just want to be home. I just want to be home and do my work, and work on Patreon and work on my games. I have had to send out a million scheduling emails to rearrange everything because of these trips. But now those trips are gone, and I have no more trips on the horizon. And that means not only can I relax and enjoy living in the city where I live, but I can also get back to my regularly scheduled content. Yes, that's right. Everyone loves content, and that's what I do. I create content. I can get back to my streams, I can get back to my games, I can get back to Twitter and all the things that I enjoy doing with people that enjoy the things that I enjoy. And on that note, today we are going to be working on the very first session of my upcoming Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. Yes, that's right. We have discussed the session 0 previously. We've talked kind of about how it works. And who our characters are and things like that. Today, though, we're not going to focus so much on the characters. Well, I mean, of course, we're going to focus on the characters that we're working on the session, but rather than specifically focusing on the individual characters, we're going to talk about how can we make this first session of our campaign as exciting and intriguing and mysterious as we would like. A Renaissance man creating content. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. That is maybe the most grandiose overstatement of what I am. But yes, I am a content creator, unfortunately. But let's talk about this session. That's a lot more interesting than me and the content that I unfortunately produce. So my campaign, if you have not tuned in, is called Heart of Ice, and it is basically a redesign of 2018-2019's Rime of the Frostmaiden. It uses the same setting, and it uses a lot of the same motifs and characters and things, but I am probably going to, as I inevitably do, shake them all up and scatter them loose again in a different configuration. I find that WotC is very good at making locations and characters and situations, but not so good at threading them together or making them dynamic for individual groups. So I tend to view these published adventures as toolboxes, full of ideas and characters and stuff that I can then kind of remix for my own purposes. And that's exactly what I've done here. So in this version of Rime of the Frostmaiden, our characters, our 5 players, are all condemned criminals, shackled aboard a prison ship of my own invention called the Invisible Hand. And that prison ship is sailing towards Revel's End, which is a massive sort of end-of-the-world prison on the far northern edge of Icewind Dale. In the books, it is owned and operated by the Lord's Alliance, which is like kind of the UN for this part of the world, like the ostensibly, definitely lawfully aligned, ostensibly good aligned alliance of different important cities and nations. Because we're not really going to be messing with the Lord's Alliance much in my campaign, I wanted to change it, and I like the idea that it's a prison and it's therefore run by someone a little bit shadier. So it's currently being run by a group called the Knights of the Black Sword, who are a knightly order. Spoiler alerts, by the way, if anyone is planning on playing or reading Rime of the Frostmaiden, we're going to be talking about it pretty liberally here, so keep that in mind. So it is run by this knightly order called the Knights of the Black Sword. Let me make a point about that here. The ship and the prison both are run by the Knights of the Black Sword, and ostensibly good aligned knightly order akin to the Night's Watch, but that has recently been corrupted by worshippers of Levistus, a devil of Carceri. Great. The Knights of the Black Sword are in the book, and they run a little town called Caer Dineval, but I like the idea that they also have this kind of satellite base here at the prison. So the characters are imprisoned aboard the Invisible Hand for various reasons. They all have their own crimes, some of them political, some of them personal, and they are being shipped up to Revel's End, which is this, here, let me put this on here. They are being shipped, or their destination is Revel's End. A cheerless prison on the edge of the world, where only the most vile criminals are kept. Great. Apart from the 5 of them, there's an additional prisoner aboard the Invisible Hand. Sefek Kalto, an infamous serial killer awaiting execution in the lands to the south. Great. Now, Sefek Kalto is also a character in Rime of the Frostmaiden, and he functionally plays the role of a serial killer. And he's kind of like the first hook that the characters encounter as they're exploring Icewind Dale. So my thinking was basically that if you're going to say that they have to eventually go hunt down this serial killer and all the characters are escaped prisoners, why not say that the serial killer was also a prisoner who then escaped, right? Excellent. So basically what I'm thinking here is what I'd like to do today is make an outline of what this first session is going to look like. Because the players have never played their characters before, I imagine a good portion of it is going to be just kind of figuring out where they are and what's going on and how do they interrelate to each other. But then I imagine that they're going to want to try to bend their mind towards escape. Some of them might not, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So let's talk about our session outline, and then we can maybe go from there and talk about like prison defenses and things like that, things that they might have to overcome in their attempt to escape. Oh, one last thing I'll say is that the characters essentially are given a chance to escape, but it's very difficult. If they fail in this escape attempt, then they are reached out to by Auril, the Frostmaiden, who kind of extends a hand to help them. And in so doing, if they make that devil's bargain, they get some cool ice power, but the consequence of that, of course, is that then they are sort of bound to Auril. Great, but that might not happen this session. I kind of anticipate that that's going to happen maybe in a future session, maybe the next session, we'll see. But this is kind of how I see the session roughly going from an outline perspective, and then we can kind of get nittier and grittier in a moment. So the beginning of the session, kind of like Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. So Act 1 is basically introductions. Like we establish the characters shackled in the hold of this prison ship heading north, give them a chance to interact with each other, maybe the guards, definitely Kalto. Act 1 ends at sort of the inciting incident. Inciting incident, which my current idea is that the ship, the prison ship, stops at a port for supplies, and in the process, the guard on the ship is lessened, giving the characters the chance to escape. Yeah. Hey, what is up, Hunter? I'm back. How you doing? Thanks for coming. Yes, Timothy is back. Great. Let's see. I'm so happy to be back, Hunter. You have no idea. I'm so tired of traveling. It's nice to be home and doing my work. So that's kind of your inciting incident, is that they get this opportunity to escape because the the people on the ship, like the guard on the ship, is reduced, right? So let's go in and let's talk about that. So then, like, escape Act 2. Now, Act 2 and Act 3 are probably going to blend into each other a little bit, I would imagine, mainly in kind of a shenanigansy way. It's hard for me to anticipate what Act 3 is going to be because I don't know what level of shenanigans they're going to get up to. But I would like to, when we talk about Act 2 in more depth, I would like to establish some opportunities, some things they can exploit in their attempt to escape. Okay. Act 2, escape. The characters... potentially, like, they don't have to. And we'll talk about in a second why someone might use this opportunity to escape their captivity. If they succeed, they have to find their way across the tundra and reach the nearest settlement. Probably they don't want to stay in the town where they're currently docked, as it would be crawling with knights and crew. If they fail, they're punished or imprisoned more severely, ensuring that strengthening their need for Aurel's intervention. Now, one of the issues I have, I'm discovering now as I'm writing this, is that two of the characters are sort of imprisoned under false circumstances. Like, they have committed crimes, but the reason that they allowed themselves to be caught was they wanted to attempt to assassinate somebody inside the prison, basically, is how this works. So there is a chance that these two characters will not attempt to escape because they have someone they need to kill in the prison. If the characters choose not to escape, they don't need to. But if they allow themselves to be imprisoned at Revel's end, they'll be in a much worse position and still may accept Aurel's help. Let's see. So I like the idea of Sefik here. So Sefik in the book ends up becoming like kind of your first primary villain, right? He's like a serial killer who is tasked by Aurel to kill people that have sort of displeased her for a particular reason that isn't super relevant right now. So he definitely accepts the bargain, right? Because of that's narratively what needs to happen. But at the same time, like, I'm trying to figure out how to pace that because it's something I basically can control. I like the notion that maybe Sefik Kalto attempts to escape with the characters, but potentially foils their plans. Maybe he gets too excited when killing a guard. Maybe he dawdles to achieve some personal vengeance. Whatever the case, Kalto is a loose cannon during the escape and must be dealt with. Because then what you can do is, basically, I like the idea that they attempt to escape, and there's definitely a chance that they do escape. I think it's unlikely that they escape without Aurel's help, right? But if they do, then they do, and good for you. You're out, right? And there's a chance you might get some characters to escape and some characters who don't. But again, I think in that case, you can have Aurel kind of drive the party back together. But I like the idea that if they attempt to escape kind of their own power and they fail, then my sort of guarantee in my pocket is to say that, like, Aureel will give you exactly the power you need to escape, right? And then in addition to, like, having that power, it's also, like, using it in the escape, it's also then a power that you, like, persistently have, right? So I could see her, you know, giving you the ability to freeze metal, you know, kind of like heat metal, but with cold, and so you can damage metal bars and things like that, right? Now you have that ability. You can spend an action, you can cast freeze metal or whatever, right? So hopefully that's tempting, but I can't control if the party does escape on their own. I'll have to find some other way to get them involved. It could be that if they all escape on their own, which again I don't think they're going to, because two of them at least are going to want to stay until they get to the prison. I like the idea that, you know, if Sefik escapes because they basically allow him to escape, then they are somewhat on the hook for the terrible things that he does. Act 3, then, I don't have a huge hit for, because it very much depends on whether or not they escape, but I liked the idea of the cliffhanger is the first sight of Revel's end. And potentially the reveal of Aureel. The reveal of Aureel, offering them the power they need to escape. Does she only offer this power to characters who actively seek to escape? I kind of like that. Like, maybe if you don't try to escape, then Aureel does not offer the power. Only when you're vulnerable does she reach out. I even like the idea that, like, if someone is escaping and things go bad, you know, like they're surrounded by guards or whatever, that's the moment that she reaches out and says, I can help you in this moment if you accept my power, kind of a thing, right? That it isn't just like, it could be that they're just sitting in their cell and they're, like, bemoaning their state. I can use it as, like, a way to motivate a player, but I can also use it as a way to get a player out of a sticky situation, right? That Aureel's power comes in and then, you know, all of the guards that were attacking them briefly freeze or whatever. You know what I mean? Something like that. So that's basically what I've got in terms of the structure of it. This might not happen this session, but Sefik definitely accepts. Like, Sefik accepts the power. And escapes with it. So maybe he specifically gets something that allows him to escape a lot easier. Great, so that's kind of the structure there. We established the characters. We kind of, and I almost wonder if that's like at least the first hour, if not the first half of the session, is just you guys are shackled. You know, what's the situation? How do you get out of here? So I wonder if maybe we design the invisible hand a little bit and figure out, like, precisely sort of what it looks like and what are the challenges and defenses they'll have to overcome in order to escape, right? Okay, cool. Beautiful. The invisible hand. So I would like a little bit of a sense of its command structure. Captain, important crew, design, and then, like, procedures. So let's maybe just do, like, a general summary. The invisible hand is a prison vessel. A prison vessel that visits coastal powers on the Sword Coast and purchases, not purchases, but, like, to collect prisoners. Each prisoner is essentially sold to the knights. The power in question rents them a room, essentially. A room in Revel's End. Let's say essentially as many times as we can. In Revel's End, essentially. And the knights hold onto them for as long as the client continues to pay. So some people, like, the idea basically is that it's a place to put, like, inconvenient people you can't have killed for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they're awaiting trial. Maybe it's a political thing where it's, you know, gauche to kill a member of your family or something like that, right? So it's not, it's a very secure prison. Or maybe it's someone that you don't know how to kill, right? There's got to be at least one, like, powerful lich in Revel's End, right? So it's a very secure prison, but it's not, I don't think, a particularly populated one, because I don't imagine that there are tons of prisoners that fall into this category. Obviously, these 5 do fall into that category, but I don't imagine it's got anything more than, like, maybe 20 prisoners at any given time. Collects prisoners. Let's see. I'm a little curious about the politics here. So I don't know tons, and this is maybe my fault, but I remember there not being a lot about the Knights of the Black Sword in the book, that I was, like, a little disappointed with, like, how little there actually is about them. So the specific politics of, like, who's in charge and why and what's going on are kind of unknown to me. Or at least I don't think that they're, like, established, so maybe we should establish some of those right now. So let's do Knights of the Invisible Sword. I'm on the wrong page to look something up. Oh, not Invisible Sword, blah, blah, Knights of the Black Sword. Knights of the Black Sword. So, okay, we know that they are a cult of Levistus. A cult of Levistus. A devil in Carceri. Right, or the Archdevil of Carceri. Once they were a noble organization. I kind of like the idea that, like, they were the once a noble organization, they were Icewind Dale's equivalent to the Red Cross. They rescued people lost in the snow. They escorted caravans. They dealt with minor monster troubles, yetis, ogres, and the like. I'm trying to think, like, how did they get corrupted, right? Like, what was the influence there? Again, imagine a kind of like Night's Watch situation, you know? I don't think it's, I like the idea that it's more, the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones is, at least during the time of the main series, is largely sort of manned by criminals. I like the idea that this didn't start that way and isn't. This is much more almost like the Kingsguard or something, right? It's much more of a noble organization, or was a noble organization that has since kind of been corrupted from the inside by this cult. So who does that entail? Like, how does that happen? Do you get a demagogue? I mean, I kind of like the idea of it being an item, right? But it's weird that they call themselves the Knights of the Black Sword if the item was, oh, you're good, Hunter. If the item was yes, this is Icewind Dale. This is based on Rime of the Frostmaiden. So, I mean, maybe they were called something else. Maybe they were Knights of the blank blank, right? And then when they found this black sword, this item, it began to kind of corrupt them. Because I like the idea of they recently changed their name to this thing that sounds a lot more sinister. Like, it doesn't have to be a secret that the Knights of the Black Sword are bad. That's fine. I just like the idea that they have this pretend veneer of legitimacy. They were once called something else. The Knights of the blank blank. Like, you know, the Last Flame or something like that, right? Knights of the Red Cross, functionally. But when their Lord Commander found this black blade. Oh, dude. I love the Terror. The Terror is magnificent. One of my D&D groups is, I think, gonna sit down and rewatch it because it's so awesome. Yeah, it's just tricky to say hunger because they, like, rule a small town. So why would they go crazy? I mean, yeah. Maybe it's a combination, right? Like, I like the idea that they find this. I've never read the book. I've heard the book is good. They were once called something else, Knights of the Blank Blank, but when their Lord Commander. But when famine struck their small town of Caer Dineval, their Lord Commander made a pact. Yeah. Made a pact with Levistus. And right. I like it being desperation, you know, like hunger. I mean, not specifically famine. It can be like when the everlasting rhyme descended and people began to freeze in their homes. The Lord Commander made a pact with Levistus to keep the people alive. I mean, it's pretty similar, I think, to what. Yeah. See, now I wish that I had read more about the lottery. Let me pull that up really quick because I know there's like a lottery plot in Rime of the Frostmaiden. Lottery. But I like it coming from something a little bit more humanizing. That if they were once a you know, like a noble order, that they wouldn't have like just been corrupted by power. Or Caltro, excuse me. I've been calling him Calto. It's definitely Caltro. Like Caltrop without the P. So let's see. Sacrifices to Auril. The Desert People attend towns hoping to appease Auril so that Summer can return to Icewind Dale, make sacrifices to the Frostmaiden on nights of the new moon. This is a practice that started a little over a year ago, and it became clear that Auril was angry and Summer would not be returning anytime soon. The town speakers have unanimously agreed to honor these practices, which they consider necessary evils, but would end them in a heartbeat if Auril were to be appeased or dealt with in some other way. Brinchander, Easthaven, and Targos hold lotteries in the afternoon before the new moon. The unlucky person whose name is drawn is sacrificed at nightfall. The ill-fated soul is stripped bare and either tied to a post or sent into the tundra to die. Accusations of rigged lotteries are common, but usually not acted upon. Okay. Let's see. Emergencies to hunt. So I mean, like, it's not too similar. What does Levistus give them, I guess, is my question. So let's go to Caer Dineval, look at the black swords. Knights of the Black Sword. Secret society of cultists devoted to Levistus, the Stygia. Sorry, not Carceri. Stygia is the ice one. Stygia. The sixth layer of the Nine Hells, from the confines of an ice prison from which you cannot escape. Okay, most of the cultists are Icewind Dale natives who would have perished in the wilderness had Levistus not intervened on their behalf. The cultists' stories are all the same. The Archdevil reached out to them in their minds as they were freezing to death, offering a second chance at life in exchange for their absolute devotion. After they agreed to follow Levistus, a pale glow caught in their eyes in the snow nearby, leading to the discovery of a sword-shaped amulet of Chardolin. Ooh, that's cool. Yeah, maybe we do Chardolin. I like that. So maybe we keep this, because I kind of think, like, I like the notion of the Knights of the Black Sword. Something else, the Knights of the blah blah blah. When the but when a rescue mission went wrong, a number of them returned with swords, with like sword-shaped amulets of Chardolin, and claimed to that warmed them from the inside. And let's see. They warmed them from the inside, or they kept them warm. Warmed them from the inside is a weird way to phrase that. That kept them warm. Kept them warm. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to puzzle this out. That kept them warm. This small faction grew within the knights and eventually spread throughout the town. So again, it's still desperation, right? They still did it, but it's like a small sect of them did, and then it kind of like corrupted and turned them over. Because what I like about that is the notion that like maybe the people who still run the prison are still ostensibly loyal, right? Like are still good aligned, functionally speaking, but the Knights of the Black Sword are well, no, because they wouldn't both be called Knights of the Black Sword. It would be pretty clear that they would have different names. But I did like the idea that these two characters who are hired to kill the warden of the prison are working for the villains against ostensibly good aligned people, right? It says, the Knights of the Black Sword have members scattered throughout 10 towns. They welcome new members in answer to Levistus, who speaks to them infrequently using a powerful form of cross-planar telepathy. Levistus has recently called upon them to help another of his master's disciples, an albino wizard named Avarice, achieve her goals. Even though they find her demanding and difficult to live with, they dare not defy her. Levistus has warned the Knights of the Black Sword that Duergar are plotting the destruction of 10 towns. He believes the Duergar are acting on behalf of Asmodeus, the Lord of the... I don't understand all this, like, infernal stuff. Like, having Levistus is interesting because it feels like he has to be in conflict in some way with, Auril, right? Like, I like that notion of that. Like, maybe Levistus wants to unseat Auril and take over, right? That she's made this perfectly cold place, and if he can't exist on the you know, the Sixth Stygia, then he would want to come and rule Icewind Dale. Like, that's interesting to me. That he wants to, like, cuckoo bird the fucking nest, right? Okay. Or cuckoo. So, are the knights who run the prison still good aligned? Are the knights who run the prison not good aligned, but like uncorrupted? The corrupted ones. It feels to me like if you're running the prison, right, that, like, because I like the idea of basically like a splinter faction. So you've got that the Knights of the Black Sword hire these assassins, the party members, to kill the warden of the prison for whatever reason. You know what I mean? Like, you could do a thing where the warden, the Knights sent a delegation to, but that would be so much, it would be so much easier to just, yeah, hold on, sorry, I'm trying to puzzle all this out. Then I sent a delegation to Revel's End to convert the garrison there. The warden saw through the cult and banished them all, possibly imprisoned them, and refused to convert. Now, on Levistus's orders, the knights have hired assassins to kill the warden and replace and free the imprisoned knights. Yeah, okay. So that means that the current warden is not a member of the Black Sword, right? That they're knights of the something else. They're still called themselves that. So we need a name for like an ostensibly good aligned kind of Red Cross-esque like rescue faction, right? Like organization. Knights of the Last Flame, Knights of the... I just used Last Lamp. Kind of like Knights of the Last Lamp is interesting. Oh, that feels kind of, you know, like genie related. Knights of the Last Flame, Knights of the I've done Torch Ever Burning before, which I kind of like. Knights of the Torch Ever Burning. It's like, you know, this, we'll leave the light on for you kind of a thing. Knights of the Torch Ever Burning. Knights of the Last Watch. I don't hate Last Watch. It feels a lot like you have Night and Watch in there. Knights of the Last Watch. Knights of the Last Watch. Knights of the Light Watch. Knights of the... I like Last. Knights of the Last Watch. I don't know. That's fine. I mean, these are kids. They've probably not seen Game of Thrones. Yeah. And there's something I think good about, like, Knights of the Last Word. Ooh, Last Word is interesting too, but that feels different. Like the tone of that's different. But like Knights of the Last Watch and Knights of the Black Sword, like there's something very like it doesn't feel like as much of a palette swap, you know. It doesn't feel like as much of a rewrite. It's very similar. Like it's the same number of syllables. Yeah, let's do Knights of the Last Watch. Good idea, David. Great. So the politics here is that the invisible hand is still run by Knights of the Last Watch, uncorrupted by Levistus. They are nonetheless merciless. Yeah, Knights of the Blank is just so fantasy, it's great. Are nonetheless merciless towards their prisoners, and they're nonetheless merciless towards their prisoners. And don't. Okay. So the captain then is someone connected to the warden, I feel like, right? There's some kind of a familial relationship. Maybe not familial, but like, what if they're a couple? That's interesting. The spouse of the Revel's End warden. The captain is... I want to roll some like Iron Sworn tables to get some ideas for this captain. Okay, let me pull it up. Iron Sworn. Roll character descriptors. Cautious, agreeable, insensitive. I'm going to roll an action and a theme. Explore and debt. The captain is... I like debt. I think it's interesting. Okay, let's redo it. Let's go. Action is what? Action is gather. So they're gathering prisoners. Their theme is weakness. Interesting. I like them having a connection to the warden. I think that's cool. And I like the idea that there's some conflict between the two of them, right? That the captain of the Invisible Hand, you know, is like if they are connected, like that they're romantically connected or something like that, that they... Why would they choose to separate themselves like this, right? Their weakness. What does weakness mean? I mean, yeah. No, that doesn't work because these people are like, you know, sort of beyond saving is the idea. I don't want to make them also evil for some other reason, right? Like, I think they run a prison. They're already pretty evil. They don't also have to be cultists too, especially if we have this other group of cultists. So, like, I mean, they could be devoted to a real, you know, and that's the conflict. I don't know. Getting a little stuck here. I like that they have a connection to the to the warden. A sibling, perhaps. Yeah, what if they were both raised by both raised by the knights, or like rescued by the knights as a child. As a child, captain considers the warden like a sibling. This is maybe getting too much into who this captain is, right? Like, that's not necessarily that important. I could see it being important, but what if the captain has a crush on the warden? Has a crush on the warden, but the warden thinks of the captain as a sibling, right? Both rescued by the knights. This makes the captain bitter and resentful, likely to be cruel to the prisoners, and to drown their sorrows in booze. Right, so then, like, the theme is weakness. I don't know what the gather action is necessarily, but that also means that they're likely to, if they stop at this port, right? Okay. That's basically the character concept. Cruel, sad, kind of, weak. Let's do 3 crew that are important with different themes. So we have rumor, fear, and history. Okay. So we have rumor, fear, and history. So 3 different like tasks on board. You definitely need sort of like the prison master, right? Like who's the person down below, like the head guard or whatever. Feels like fear to me. Head guard. Fear. Maybe they're afraid of their charges. Like meant to the disciplinarian, they're nervous around the criminals. Ostensibly the disciplinarian, they're nervous around the criminals, and overly cautious with them. I like the navigator being related to like history. I like history being that like, ooh, one of these people has to be a spy for the knights. Maybe that's the rumor. Yeah. Or like the sailmaster is the history. And old salt, they talk about superstitions and dangerous things upon the waters of the sea of moving ice. They fear Auriel's wrath most of all. And then one of these people is a spy in the crew who can also potentially help the characters escape if they need to. Basically a spy working for Levistus. Although maybe this guy's a rumor then. Not that it super matters. The idea is just to provoke a notion. So, but who on the crew would be that? Just like a regular, kind of like, yeah, they're just like a regular crew person. Like a deckhand. Deckhand, rumor, history. The deckhand is actually a spy for the Black Swords. Wears a black amulet and can help the characters either escape or potentially kill the warden. Okay. Yeah, so that's a lot, right? We've got a lot there, right? And I can roll the like ancestors and stuff for them. I wanted like the character nugget. Okay, so the design of the ship. So basically my thinking is that I like the notion of it being a prison ship, yes, but because they don't usually bring that many prisoners, you either have like a largely empty prison on the lower decks. So, okay, let's see. You'd have a top deck. Top deck. you'd have functionally, I mean, what would be a gun deck, but there's no gun. So we'll just call it a middle deck, and then we'll say a lower deck. You'd also presumably have a forecastle, and you'd have an aft castle, but we'll often just call it the captain's cabin. Right, that feels like enough places. The lower deck, the middle deck, and the top deck. Now, I like the idea that if they're a prison ship, right, but they're not used to carrying very many prisoners, that much of the lower deck would be given over to, like, crew berths and, like, would be like cargo and stuff, right? That they only have, like, 3 cells, maybe, right, in one end of the ship. So the prison consists of 3 cells near the aft, separated from each other, but also separated by an additional wall, like bar, like additional. I can't think today. Like wall of bars. So it's like there are the 3 cells, right? Like 1 starboard, 1 port, and 1 to aft, and then there's like that area is separated from the rest of the ship by another like door and gate. So you have to get through like the main cage in, and then there's the 3 different cells against the walls. Yeah, I think that makes sense. The rest of the deck, the rest of the lower deck is composed of crates, barrels, and other supplies. The middle deck are the crew berths. The middle deck is composed largely of the crew berths. Here, the crew sleeps in hammocks that stretch along the spine of the vessel. This is all very, like, practical. I want to kind of come up with some, like, more interesting magical defenses or that kind of a thing, right, that they might need to get past. It can't just be escape your cell, get out of here, right? Like, there's some mundane stuff we should figure out, like who has the keys and, you know, what are the watches and things like that. But I also like the idea of there being, like, at least 1 or 2 kind of magical defenses. It makes me curious why they call it the invisible hand, right? Do they have an invisible stalker or unseen servants or something like that, right? Like, I want to find some way to up the fantasy element. Before I do that, though, I think I'm going to run to the bathroom and get a little bit of water and stuff. So I might be back in a minute. I'm going to take a brief break here in the middle of the stream. And I'll be back in, like, we'll say 3 to 5 minutes. Cool. We're making good progress, though, so far. Thanks, everybody. Hey everybody, I'm back. Thanks for your patience. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. Went to the bathroom, got some water. I have some ideas that I got while I was there. So I like the notion of there being, two other chambers, functionally like where the forecastle and the captain's cabin would be, but on the middle deck. And I think that means we have to have. I think a galley makes sense, but it's a little bit boring. But I definitely think like a weapons locker makes sense. And this is where the prisoner's gear is stored. It's also independently locked. Dependently locked. The key, not kept on the same key ring as the prisoner's cells. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then we have the captain's cabin, like the main deck, the top deck, and the captain's cabin. Let's do this. Let's go like that. And then top deck is full of normal top deck stuff. Shrouds and capstans. Ooh, what if they have and the like, plus a pair of launches. Plus, yeah, a pair of launches, one of which is currently in the port, the other still there. The forecastle and the captain's cabin. There are letters or notes between the captain and the warden. Possibly an unwritten or an unsent confession of love. Not sure what to put in the forecastle if we're going to have the middle deck, but I think that's all good for the most part. So let me think about like the procedures required to escape here, right? So the characters begin imprisoned in 2 of the 3 cells, right? They are not shackled, but there are 3 players in 1 cell and 2 players in another. The players sharing a cell. Well, if there's 6 of them, there's 3 cells. There should be 2 of them in. Yeah, let's do that. So each have a cellmate. Begin imprisoned in the 3 cells. Each player has a cellmate. 4 of the players share cells with each other. 1 player shares a cell with Cephek. Great, yeah, that works. And then let's see. 1 player shares a cell with Cephek. To escape their cells, they'll need to either neutralize the lock or escape the bars. To escape the larger cell, they'll need to do the same. So the lock can't be picked without tools, which they don't have. But if there's a magical way, that could potentially work. I wonder if any character who's explicitly a spellcaster is shackled or gagged. Right? Because, like, Revel's End has anti-magic cells, but I don't think the ship would. you know? But if they don't have their, like, focuses, then they can't cast, right? They can't cast anything that has a verbal or a material component without I believe that's how that works. Spellcasting focus. 5e. Sorry, I'm Googling it. Or D&D Beyonding it, I guess. Just no way to satisfy the material component. Need to cast a spell where it's required. If a spell needs a material component, you can use your focus instead. If the material component has a monetary value, blah, 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 that's just is instead needed. So, like, you can cast any spell that doesn't have a material component if you don't have... Like, if you don't have a focus, you can cast any spell without a material component. Spells without material components. I'm curious what they are. Mage Hand doesn't. That's cool. Firebolt doesn't. Yeah, okay. So let's put a little, like, thing here for spellcasting. Spellcasting. To start, none of the characters are bound or gagged. If a character starts to cast a spell and the guard notices it, they are subsequently bound and gagged. This might be a good way to lure a guard into a cell. Great. But they'll need to do so without being seen. So the guards, then. So I think there are 2 guards down here at any given time. Guards. Maybe 3. At any given time, there are 3 guards in the, you know, in the cells. Like in the prison area, prison block, I don't know. 1 inside the main cell and 2 outside. All 3 have keys to all 3 blocks. All key have 3s to all 3 cells and the main door. Any violence or magic from a prisoner brings down additional guards atop them. The characters have no gear, wear only a simple prison robe, meaning they'll be easy pickings against even a few prison guards. Okay. Great. There's an additional guard posted by the stairs leading up from below decks to mid decks to the middle deck. I guess from the lower deck, yeah. From the lower deck to the middle deck. If violence erupts here, he summons help from above. Help, in that case, guards from the middle deck quickly suit up. This takes 3 rounds. This takes 1 minute. But guards from the forecastle come running down to the lower deck. This takes 3 rounds. Okay. I mean, I think that makes sense. What's the total complement, I guess, then, is the question. So I like the idea of maybe like a dozen guards at any given time. Total complement. Total complement. So you've got 4 guards on duty. You've got 4 guards sleeping, and 4 guards like off duty essentially, but awake, but kind of ready to jump in. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So then I want to come up with at least one, if not 2 or 3 kind of interesting magical components here, right? What are the like weird little quirks that make this more interesting? Like, one of which I want to be defensive. You know, they've got some kind of a thing. I don't think it's a magical, like an anti-magic field. I think that's a little too much for the ship itself. Fantastical elements. I like the idea that like maybe there's not a... Yeah, maybe the Sailmaster is not a Sailmaster. Maybe the Sailmaster is a spellcaster, right? And the crew of the Invisible Hand. The ship does not have a crew traditionally. Instead, the Sailmaster is a mage with a number of persistent unseen servant spells that that crew the vessel. Ropes, pulleys, and sails all seemingly adjust themselves, hence the ship's name, the Invisible Hand. This also means if the Sailmaster is killed or isn't aboard the ship, isn't like within a certain distance of the ship, isn't within 1 mile within 1 mile of the ship, it cannot sail. Thus they can't steal the ship. I mean, they can, but it's much harder, right? I like that one. I wanted to have some kind of a magical defense. What do we think that is? Do we think that is like a lockdown mechanic? Do we think that that is something that prevents them from... Yeah, do we think that's a lockdown mechanic? Do we think it's a... Boy, I don't know. Well, that's the only thing I can think of right now. Like an alarm mechanic? I like an alarm. Yeah, that's cool. An alarm, because that's something that like they would probably have some non-magical version of, but I like the idea. But I think you can pretty easily say that it's magical, and just that's like it's like a flavor thing, right? A magical alarm that the guards can trip by speaking a command word. This causes red lights to flip on, and even the eyes of the red lights to flip on. This causes all the lanterns aboard the ship to turn red. Yeah. All the lanterns aboard the ship to turn red, and notifies the crew, or the captain notifies all members of the crew. Yeah. Okay, cool. Because what I like about that is that then it like it's pretty easy for them. Like they even if the guards aren't really like, if they try to escape when the guards are kind of off duty, right, when they're at this port, then the magical alarm is still such that they can kind of lure them into thinking the ship is less defensible than it is, right? Which I like that. I want some kind of active form of magical defense, whether that's like a a magical creature that it summons to fight them, or like a, you know, what is the like pull, like break only in case of emergency kind of a thing, you know? What's the really cool magical thing? Is it like a time stop? Is it a... Man, that seems very powerful. I'm trying to think, like, what's a good... Oh, is there like an iron grate or something that comes down across the hatchway, right? Like this, like the companionway up, yeah. Or even like a wall of force. A wall of force that crosses the that appears across the companionway when a secondary alarm word is spoken. This can only be dispelled by the, like, the warden or whatever, right? Whoever the ship's the prison master, whatever you would call that, right? The orderly, or the head orderly, head guard, we'll say. Boy, I can't talk today. It's been a while since I've streamed, right? Yeah, that's okay. I don't love it as much because it's just kind of like a wall, you know? You're trapped. Hey, Alan, what's up? We're just getting ready to wrap up. You're always here at the last minute. Yeah, I don't love that one. I maybe want something a little sexier. I like that the ship doesn't have a crew. I like that there's a magical alarm because it's just kind of... That's more flavor. I want like one interesting, unexpected magical defense that the ship has if the prisoners try to escape. It wouldn't be... Is it something like on them? Is it like, ooh, they are wearing these robes. That's interesting. Is there like something about the robes that like the symbol of the order or whatever glows, and there's some like latent like hold person effect or something like that? The question is like what triggers it, right? Like if the alarm goes and then this happens, then it feels like it's a robes become straitjackets is pretty good. That's pretty good. Alan coming in hot with a suggestion right away. I do think that's pretty strong. The only question is like, what's the trigger for that? Because we already have an alarm, and it feels too much to put that on top of alarm, right? The like magic alarm happens. The lanterns aboard turn red, notifies all members of the crew, and the things become straitjackets. Like that feels pretty nasty. I like it being a secondary condition, right? But maybe it's all just tied into the alarm. That's what makes the most sense to me, but then it doesn't feel like they're three separate things. It just feels like a beefed up alarm. How do we... Is there... But why would they have that compartmentalized again? Why would they have it be... Okay, the alarm goes off, and then also the straitjackets are tied up. Yeah, Alan says maybe in place of a taser, there are guards that carry a key fob that'll turn your... I wonder if that's what it is. So, because they might even then discover that first, right? Like, that's kind of how they restrain you initially. Yeah, that's pretty good. Because then you don't have to do... I was going to say they would, like, shackle you, right? If you're a spellcaster, but if you start to cast a spell, then they can like restrain you with it. Yeah, I think that's cool. The prison robes are actually enchanted to be straight to animate and restrain the... I don't know, I'm actually in there. Are enchanted to animate and restrain the prisoner. The certain guards, the higher ranked ones carry wands. Each carry a rod that allows them to restrain a target in their robe. The robe can be destroyed potentially or removed. Potentially,
or removed, but nonetheless, but not while it's restraining a target. Carries a rod. Their robe is activated and they're restrained. So then I think the guard inside here, one guard, one inside the main cell who carries a rod, of restraint, and 2 outside. Yeah, okay. I think that's cool. So then shore leave. Let's talk about shore leave. When the characters... Shore leave. We'll go one more over like that. Shore leave. Upon arriving at the port, the lax captain allows perhaps too many of their guards to come ashore, and in the process grants the prisoners a prime chance to escape. So let's see. We have 4 guards on duty, 4 guards sleeping, and 4 guards off duty but awake. So if we cut that in half, then we have 2 guards on duty, 2 guards asleep, and 2 guards off duty. 1 guard inside the cell with a rod of restraint. 1 guard, or outside the main cell. Inside the main cell, 1 guard outside the main cell. I gotta say cell block is maybe what I'm thinking of. Inside the cell block with a rod of restraint. 1 guard outside the cell block. 2 guards asleep on the middle deck. 2 guards awake but bored on the top deck. I think probably if there's 3 people here. Oh, the deckhand doesn't make sense then. So one of the guards, I guess, is a traitor, not a... Yeah, it's a guard. 1 guard is actually a spy for the Black Sword. Okay, cool. So the captain and the head guard plus 5 others have gone ashore. The sailmaster, the sailcaster, and 6 guards remain on the ship. Yeah, I think that's fine. I like that. I want to talk about Cephik for a second. What does he do? So Cephik is the serial killer that is imprisoned with them as well, and he is the loose cannon, right? Like, maybe they collaborate with him, maybe they don't. He accepts the gift that Ariel gives him, but doesn't... but I don't think that happens quite yet. I mean, I think it's fine if he just, like, I don't know if I have to write this up, but I think, like, if he dawdles, right? If he, you know, needs to carve up one of the guards or whatever because he's a crazy guy, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's fine. I kind of think that's enough, you know what I mean? Like, there's enough here, and it's robust enough. Like, I might do a thing on the Act 1... Caltro, introduce a few concepts to them. The head guard, possibly the spell or the sailcaster, maybe an unseen servant comes to deliver the guards their food, or comes to deliver the prisoners their food. Yeah. how do I basically, what's this information transfer like? Prisoners, their food. The traitor guard winks at them, tells them, winks at them. I think the head guard comes down to threaten them at one point, maybe explain that they're coming into port, and if they behave, they'll get an alcohol ration, right? They'll get a rum ration or something like that, right? Like, comes down to explain that we're going into port to resupply. If I come back and I hear that there have been no difficulties, then you'll get rewarded, right? But what that does is it reveals to the party that this is a good time to try to cause some trouble. Yeah, I think that's all good. I like that. I think that's plenty to do, at least for the first session, right? And again, Act 3 is pretty tough for me to plan because I don't know exactly where they're all going to be in terms of, what's going on. I think I have to move one of 10 towns over closer to the shore in order to make this work. It's weird to me that they don't have any, like the 10 towns doesn't have a single, sea-facing port. That seems very strange. I know we're a little early, but I think I might call it there because I think this is going to be one of those, prison breaks are... Ooh, a harmonica? That's a classic move. A classic move. Yeah, I don't hate that. I was kind of imagining, I think there's a really bad movie with Sean Connery and Lawrence Fishburne called Just Cause, where Ed Harris plays a serial killer, and he has, painted the shit out of the inside of his cell. I think I was kind of imagining that, that they give him paint, because it keeps him from causing trouble. But yeah, I mean, he definitely has to have some kind of weird affectation. The harmonica's cool though too, because then you could when they encounter him later, you can hear it whistling down an alley or whatever. I'm into that. Yeah, I think a harmonica for Kelto is fun. Get that very Western, Once Upon a Time in the West, kind of a riff going. Yeah, I think I might leave it there because again, it's one of those prison escape episodes that's so much about reaction, staying in the moment and reacting to their plans. That I think this is probably good for a single session, especially if these are new characters and we want to give them some time to kind of mess around and figure out who they are and what their deal is. Yeah, so let's call it there. I know it's a little early, but a 90-minute stream isn't too bad for our first time back. Thank you for coming, everybody. Thanks to David and Hunter and Alan showing up there at the very end. We will be back on Thursday with, believe it or not, another adventure prep stream. I don't have a monster this week because I'm a little behind on the podcast, but I do have to read ahead. Thanks, buddy. I do have to read ahead on the boy, I can't talk, on Wild Beyond the Witchlight because I have another session of that coming up and they're about to head into the next region, into Yon, and so I need to read about that. So that'll be on Thursday, same time, 2 p.m. That will probably be a full 2 hours just because there's a lot to read and to get through there. But until then, you can find all kinds of stuff that I make here on this channel. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, click the bell, you get notified when I go live again in the future. You can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Discord, you can find me on Patreon. All those links should be below. But thanks for coming and hanging out just as we get back into the swing of things. I'm looking forward to doing more streams now that my schedule has calmed down a little bit. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming, and until I see you again, happy adventuring.